are the ghost of my conscience. You have the love I seek to find.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Time is Right podcast. My name is Scott Smith, and I am your host here on the Time is Ripe. This is a podcast of Ripe Creatives, which is a ministry based in the great city of Philadelphia that leverages the arts for the purpose of missions. Here on the Time is Ripe, we do something very unique and niche in terms of podcasts, where we go back in time to discuss events that happened within our community's history. This is kind of like a digital journal. It's like an audio diary as a ministry for Ripe Creatives. And we talk about events where we got booked to go somewhere or events that we hosted ourselves and produced in the city of Philadelphia or in the surrounding region. Today is a really special episode because we're talking about one of our own events. And it was an event that we actually did for the first time in 2.5 years. The date that we're talking about is November 2nd. It was a Saturday evening, 2024, November 2nd, at a place called Manoa Community Church. We did an event called Good Soil. Now, for any enthusiasts of this podcast, you might recognize that name because that was actually our first ever episode here on the podcast. Technically our second because we had to setting the stage first. But
semantics,
semantics, tomato. Episode 1 really in our hearts was Good Soil. It's the first episode we ever recorded on this podcast. It's actually what prompted us starting the podcast was our first Good Soil. 2.5 years later, we finally did another one on November 2nd. To break this whole thing down, tell a little bit about the backstory, get into the actual night of the event, talk about the impact and the fruit from it, I have 4 guests in the room. This is our biggest podcast in a long, long time. We got 3 returners and a 4th that is a first-time guest, so we're going to do her last. First up, he's kind of a guest. He's more like a host. Jarrett Moses, welcome back.
I'm here.
The guy. He also produces this amazing podcast. Another returner to the pod, we got Mr. DJ G.
Oh, boy.
Mr. Mickey Mouse is back. He is the DJ of Ripe and Ripe Creatives and all the things that we ever do. Pretty much if we have a DJ somewhere, it is DJ G. He's the best. And this actually happened at the church that he and his wife, Tiffany, shout out to Tiff, attend and are on staff at Manoa Community Church.
Amen. What's going on, guys?
It's going to be great to have DJ G here. We also have 2 other guests. One's a returner, one is first time, and they happen to be husband and wife.
Wow.
Crazy.
Oh, boy.
Returner first, the husband, Esteban Nieves. What's up, baby?
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
It's been a minute since we've had Esty on a pod.
Shoot.
I think Worship Fest. You were on the Worship Fest episode.
Worship Fest.
I think you were on the
yeah.
Creation
Pretty
Fest
sure.
episode or something like that, too.
Yeah, it was.
Back in the day.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
You've
it
been
was
on a
that
couple
one.
episodes throughout the history of the first 3 seasons, but welcome back in season 3.
Good to be here.
And Esty, do you want to do the honors? Do you want to introduce our
you
4th
got
guest?
it, bro. You got it, bro. You got it, for sure.
All right, our 4th and final guest, Esteban's wife, but many other things to us here in this Ripe community, Priscilla Nieves. Welcome to the pod.
What's up, everybody? Glad to be here.
Pri, you are not getting off the hook here. As a first-time guest, this is something we have all of our first-time guests do. You got to give a little intro of yourself. So you got to talk about who you are, what you do, and how you got connected to this whole thing called Ripe. Go ahead, Pri.
Who am I? Okay, so married to Esty, and we got connected to Ripe through, long story, but a friend of ours I was connected with Rashid, and then we ended up all going to this worship night together and just got plugged in with the whole community. And yeah, for a little bit about me, I am a musician. I teach music, so that's kind of my main thing that I do. Yeah, Esty and I, we write our own original music under Wildfire, but I teach kids at a private Christian school music. I teach string lessons. My main instrument is viola, but I sing and play keys, so I'm involved with Ripe Worship on that end of things and then doing singer-songwriter stuff.
Amazing. Pri is the best. That might have been the most efficient,
Impressive.
introduction we've
Short
ever
and
had.
sweet.
Mine
Short.
was definitely
That was a
not
clean
long.
intro, Pri. Pri's the one professional in this room. The rest of us are just
That's it.
a bunch of amateur
Bunch
hours.
of scrubs.
Pri, thanks for being here. Jarrett, Este, and DJ Angie. It's going to be a great time. Now, listen, backstory of Good Soil. We already said this already, but this was our first episode back in season 1 was Good Soil. 2.5 years have transpired, have transposed, have passed since we've done one of these. And the main reason why is because Ripe has grown a lot. And when we launched Good Soil in 2022, it was an all Ripe event, meaning everybody in Ripe was a part of it. And we kind of picked the date together. We picked it like 6, 7, 8 months in advance. And we decided, hey, we're going to do this event together with everybody. Well, what has happened in Ripe is that our team has grown from about 15, 20 people to about 40 people. And as we have doubled in size, it is really hard to find a date that works for everybody.
Yep. So true.
And so we just kind of like basically didn't do Good Soil for like 2.5 years as we were like, well, we can't find a date to do a Good Soil, which was kind of like a dumb problem because we could have just done Good Soil with some people and not everybody. But we didn't think about that being a possibility. So we just didn't do one for 2.5 years.
But now we know.
It's been 2.5 years. We knew we wanted to do a Good Soil again. We realized we probably couldn't pick a date. And Pastor Stefan, actually, at Manoa Community Church, came to that original Good Soil, and for the last 2.5 years has been asking us to do an event at his church. And so we were going to do an event on November 2nd, probably call it Ripe Takeover or something else. And then as we started to realize the version of the event that we were doing, it was going to be artists. It was going to be poets. It was going to be singers and hip-hop artists. It was also going to be worship. And we were like, wait, that's Good Soil, isn't it? And then it was like this light bulb went off. Like, yeah, we could just call an event at a church that involves all the different parts of Ripe, even though it won't involve every one of those things in Ripe. Good Soil.
I mean, part of it too with changing that to being the model of Good Soil was, again, tying into what you said, like we weren't going to get everybody in one event that we were hosting somewhere. We needed someone else to kind of like set the day and time that they wanted us to come through. And it was show up or don't show up, which it's fine either way, whichever one you want to do.
To your point, right? If we did an event with all 20 artists, we have 20 artists in Ripe right now. That's like festival. That would be a 3-day festival.
It'd be a fest, yeah, for sure.
Right, it would be over the course of multiple days, multiple stages, trying to get 20 people sets in one event. You can't do that successfully. So it's like, okay, let's have 2 poets, 2 singers, 2 hip hop, a DJ, a painter, and worship. Mm-hmm. That's still like a 3-4 hour event, which we found out at this event. But not everybody can be on every one, but that doesn't mean we can't do these in different places with different lineups. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, variety is good with just having multiple different things on. So it was really good. Good way to do it.
Moving to you, Ant. You had a big part in actually us branding it as Good Soil because we were going to do this event at your church on November 2nd with Pastor Stefan and Manoa, but it was branded as Ripe Takeover. Like, from your vantage point, why did we change the name to Good Soil, and why did that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think that all just stemmed from a conversation we were having on the phone. We knew Pastor Stefan expressed interest in us putting something together, as far as a concert for the church. And, you were bringing up Ripe Takeover. And as we continued to talk about it, we came back to, 2 years ago, Good Soil. And I just started thinking about like what Good Soil meant, why we chose that name in the first place. And it's because good soil is fertile. Good soil is something that you want to sow into. So we just wanted to put that on display.
Well, I think playing off of that too, using the term Ripe Takeover, one, it has like a funny history for us, but it's not always the best example of it because we don't want it to come across to a church like, hey, we're coming in, we're taking over, like we're not working with you on this, you let us in and we do what we want. We want it to be something where they feel like it's a partnership. It's not us just running a night. It is us working with them and helping them grow their own people. Yeah, and a lot of people said that Ripe Takeover felt like a youth event. Yes.
Like the branding felt like very much for teens, and our whole purpose in this was to bring a church together and it not just be a youth event. We're going to get the youth there anyway because the youth love us, but we want to get the adults there. And I think Good Soil, also something, Ant, that you didn't say, but you said to me, which I think was kind of the nail in the coffin of like, let's change the name to Good Soil, was the idea that it was about fundraising.
Amen.
Right. And the whole event was like, we do need to raise resources as a ministry. We haven't done the like, let's do a donor dinner, or let's do a silent auction, or let's do some other fundraising event. We're all artists. We know how to throw shows. So let's throw a fundraiser show. And you kind of said like, well, good soil is actually a vernacular that we use in church to talk about giving, right? Sowing into good soil, that's where we want to give our resource. So why don't we just call the event Good Soil? And I'm so glad we did. And it felt like a resurrection of the vision 2.5 years ago. And also just kind of felt like a continuation of 2022 into 2024.
Yeah, let alone the fact that I think the name Good Soil like fits really well with the name Ripe, right? Like ripe has to do with fruit, good soil has to do with fruit. I think it's just like, yeah, it was a perfect name for an event like that, I think. And as we're talking, I'm kind of seeing that more and more. It's dope. It's dope.
Yeah.
Shout out to branding. Also, shout out to Stefan, Pastor Stefan. We've already been talking about him, but when he said yes to us doing an event, regardless of the name, on November 2nd, and we started kind of toying around with what we were going to do, he gave us 2 caveats. He said, yes, you can do an event at our church. We've wanted you to do one for 2 years, but you have 2 rules. Number 1 is wildfire has to be on it. Esteban and Priscilla, you guys have a ton of history with Pastor Stefan. You were on staff at Manoa for a while. Not currently, but used to be the worship pastors there. And so he loves you guys a ton. So he said, if you guys come, wildfire has to be on it. And then secondly, he made a suggestion to us. It might have been you'd have to do this or you're not doing it. I can't really remember how he phrased it. But if he wanted Fragile Frame to be on it as well, which is artists from Manoa, which happens to be Stefan's twin brother and niece. So father-daughter duo. Absolutely phenomenal. And we were like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Like, let's have one artist that's not from Ripe on the show. Yeah. And so we brought Fragile Frame in to be the opener. Wildfire was basically the closer before Ripe Worship. And the rest of the lineup was a bunch of random people from our community. But yeah, those were kind of 2 of the caveats from Stefan. So the final lineup was Wildfire, Fragile Frame from Manoa, Leah Wren, Abel, DJ Angie, of course, who's on staff at Manoa and was the DJ for Ripe. Jarrett running sound. We had a bunch of media folks as well. I was the host of the event. Ripe Worship closed things out. And in total, it was almost 20 people in our community that committed to being there at that night to serve.
And we did have a couple poets, too.
Oh, my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
A couple poets.
Sergine.
And Rosie.
And
Rosie,
Guys, I'm fumbling the bag. Sergine was on it. Yeah. Greg Snow was on it. And Rosaline Rodriguez was on it as well.
So many people.
I think also just to touch on the just Fragile Frame banner, I think, as a ministry that's been our heart. Not only to come into a place and say, hey, look what we can do, but to have somebody that is a part of wherever we are, that people can continue to connect with locally. And Fragile Frame they just fit the mold really well.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and honestly, that heart is birthed out of what we have seen not done well historically. Amen. With tours and different things that have happened, coming to the city of Philadelphia and not making room for the local artists when they're on the ground because, our run of show doesn't allow for it, or
right.
Our contract with the booking manager, with the label, doesn't allow for that. And Ann and I, as well as other friends that we've had for years and years that are in the music world, we've all talked about how that just feels like a misstep.
And we've experienced it firsthand, and it is not fun.
But that idea of like, man, if you make room for the local, then when you're in a city for 24, 48 hours. And then you're gone. Well, at least you've done something to invest in somebody who's going to be there after you're gone. Yeah. And so we want to model something differently when we come and do shows, and somebody is there from that community that makes sense for us to have on the lineup. We want to make sure that we do that with integrity. Yeah, so,
amen.
Leading up to the event, I just want to ask, like, from your guys' perspective, you guys as Wildfire, but also you ended up being a part of Ripe Worship as well. Like, what was the tone from our team leading up to Good Soil from your perspective?
I thought it was great. I thought everyone was super excited for the show. Like you guys said, I think Scott said this earlier, it had been like 2.5 years since we'd done a Good Soil. So I think there was a lot of positive anticipation for the show. I know for me and I'll speak for Priscilla too, just going back to a place that we had spent years at was super fun. Like, we were really excited to see people that we hadn't seen in a little bit. We were really excited just to, lead worship and to play our songs there again. So for us, like, we were super hyped to go back and to see people. And I would say that was the general feeling of everybody. Like, everyone was just excited to do another Good Soil, and and it went really well. So
Yeah, for Esty and I, we love Manoa, so it just felt like really exciting to go back and just to be able to see people and do our music. But I also feel like after coming from 2 years of not doing Good Soil, it felt like leading up to it, it was like, okay, this makes sense, like, why we're doing it. Because I feel like the first time, like, Good Soil was awesome 2 years prior. But it felt like there was so long in between of it. Just like, what was the purpose of that? Like, there was so much good, like, artistry that came out of it. But this, like, somewhere where we had connection with people and just different things that could just grow from this experience. It just felt like, okay, this is what Good Soil should be. Like, this makes sense. And I feel like the whole team felt that way.
Yeah, that felt similarly. And from the church's perspective, like, what did you experience from, people at Manoa, how they were feeling leading up to the show?
People at Manoa were very excited to see the two hometown heroes return.
that's crazy, bro. That's crazy.
There was a lot of anticipation up to the event. There were also a lot of people willing to volunteer, say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Even a few days up to the event, one of the older ladies at the church was like, do you guys have flyers I can go around and hand out? And we didn't get her those flyers, but we're going to get them flyers next time. But it was just great to see so many people willing to put their hands to the plow, and also just being so excited and showing up during the night and looking forward to another one. They're like, "Hey, when are we doing another one?" So, it was overall like a really good experience.
Yeah, and shout out to Bill as well, the youth director at Manoa.
Yes.
Something that we didn't expect, but that was thrown into the mix for us, was that he did food for us, for the whole team. And he kind of doubled it because he knew he really wanted the youth group to come to Good Soil. And so he's like, you know what, if I actually host dinner for Ripe and the youth group kids so that they can get to eat together before the event, that could be a real incentive for the students to come early, make sure they actually come, but also get to know the artists, and for the artists to kind of not have this like green room mentality, but to have like real relationship with the young people of the church and connection, right? So shout out to Bill for doing that.
Yeah,
I thought that
shout out Bill. Absolutely.
Bill's the best.
Also, shout out Sugar and Spice.
Amen. They made sure they got Este's favorite.
That is my favorite Thai place in Delco, right on Route 3. If you're ever there, you should pop in. It's so good.
Esty felt very loved.
Only takeout though. Hey, only takeout though.
We
but
100% need a marketing budget.
Yeah. Facts.
Sugar and Spice. Right
No, but
now.
for real, it was amazing just to like be there with all the youth, and it was dope that Bill got that. Like, it just felt so nostalgic. Yeah, like just like being there, like in the spot, eating the food, being with the youth. So yeah, really, really big shout out to Bill.
Yeah.
And Sugar and Spice.
Yeah. Also, I feel like it was a cool idea to like do something prior to the concert where you can connect with people that would be at the concert. Like for Esty and I, we had background with people, so we knew a lot of the people, and it was just a lot of catching up. But for some of the artists that were there, they've never met any of the kids before, and I know I've heard from a couple of them that they had really good conversation. So it was cool to do that.
Yeah, shout out to Bill. I thought that was a genius idea, and something that I hope could be a part of the way other people do events in the future. Here was kind of the run of day, because we've been setting this whole thing up to not even talk about it yet, but all of this has been really, really important. But here's the run of day. So from 2 to 5, we did sound checks, and that was all the artists plus Ripe Worship in there. And then from food was like 4 to 5. And then at 5 o'clock, we did our meeting as a team, where we just kind of go over the run of show, make sure everybody's feeling good, ask what's on people's hearts to pray for. And then we all pray over the room together. And then 5:30 doors open, 6 o'clock was the start of the event. And right from the very beginning of the event, people were coming in. Like, people were coming in even before doors open. People were coming in from doors open until the start of the event. And we had quite a few people there by 6 o'clock, where I kind of got things started with DJ NG, and then we handed it over to Fragile Frame. Here was the flow of the event. So we already went over the artists, but here was the exact flow. And I would just love for us to chat through each of these sets. But it opened with Fragile Frame, which was the artist from Manoa, father-daughter duo. Then we had Abel from our community, who's a hip-hop artist. Then we did a panel discussion. And then we had Greg Snow do some spoken word, Leah Wren do singer-songwriter, Sergine do spoken word. Then we had our second panel. And then we had Wildfire, Esteban and Priscilla, and then we did the offering, Ripe Worship, and then right at the end, Rosaline Rodriguez, our painter, shared about her piece. So that is the lineup. Starting with Fragile Frame, let's talk about Good Soil 2024 on November 2nd.
Well, so Matthew and Vera Baumberger, daughter, father duo. And we've heard them perform before, just being connected with Manoa. They did a couple concerts while we were there. And I hadn't heard them like perform in I don't know, maybe a year or two. And just even the difference, like excellence wise, super tight, just their vocals and just songwriting. It's just cool to see like family doing that. So they were awesome.
Yeah, I think they just came out of the gate swinging. They hit the ground running and really helped set the tone for the evening. It was a solid performance.
I don't want to say adorable because I feel like that's almost diminishing their abilities and talents, but it was just uplifting to see a performance like that. Like, they did great. Saying adorable makes it sound like I'm like, oh, they tried. No, they killed it.
Yeah.
It is adorable.
It was adorable. Yeah. It absolutely
it's
was.
It's a father-daughter duo.
Come on.
There's very few things
That's a great
more
word
adorable.
for it. That's a great word for it.
Yeah, and Vera is just coming to her own so much over the last couple of years and just so strong vocally.
Yeah.
And Matt's obviously like a world-class guitar player and has traveled around doing music stuff for a long, long time. So shout out to Fragile Frame, and such a good fit for us just as a community for the night. And obviously for the church, most of all. So many people were there specifically to see them, which they ended up getting exposed to a lot of us for the first time, which was cool. After Fragile Frame, we had Abel.
Yep.
The one and only.
The one and only.
Yes.
Abel.
He did a great job. I thought his set was awesome, especially after Fragile Frame, just having like the change of pace, I think fit really well. He got a bunch of people dancing, including Paula. Shout out Paula.
Shout out to Paula.
You know, shout out Paula. She's a amazing older lady of the church. She's actually the church admin assistant or something like that.
She's an icon.
She's an icon. She's called the mayor of Manoa.
The mayor of Manoa.
Yeah, she's the mayor of Manoa.
Mayor of Manoa.
She was going hard. So Abel's set was probably my favorite to watch, like the room, because everybody was just in, like, of all ages, and we know so many people, and I was like, what? I just didn't expect it, and it was awesome. Paula was going
when
hard.
Paula was dancing with the youth, that was legendary.
Like I'm on stage and I look down and I'm like, wait, is that Paula in the middle of the dance circle?
Is that Paula in the pit?
Paula in the pit.
Totally Paula in the pit. So, I mean, it was just really great seeing, multiple generations just, turn up together and enjoy themselves. So,
yeah. It was so good, man. I thought Abel killed it. It's funny because we only did one hip hop on the show. I think we could have done two. But we were kind of thinking like, oh, it's Manoa, it's Havertown. You know, in Philly, we'll do more hip hop. In the suburbs, maybe less. But people loved it.
Yeah,
they did.
And Abel was just so good to begin with. Just so talented. So shout out to Abel for doing this thing, as he always does. Turn it up. Great song selection. The lights and everything else was amazing as well. And then after Abel, we had Greg Snow into a panel. Greg Snow.
It was great watching Greg, especially just seeing how much he's grown over the years. And like he's becoming a really, really solid poet.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure Manoa has not been exposed to spoken word that much previously.
Yeah.
And I think Greg was like a great person to have there just because of the way he connects with people, because of his personality, you know? And so it was dope to have him there in that spot after Abel, just because like it was something new, but he connects really well with people naturally. And so I thought people really were in when he was doing his spoken word stuff. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I thought he was great with just engaging people. He seemed really confident. Like that was my biggest, I think, just remembering his set. He seemed confident being up there and just knew who the audience was and was able to engage. And yeah, I think that people responded well to it.
Greg is never going to lack for confidence, guys. That's the one
So
thing
true.
Greg is going to
Confidence
have. Shout out to Greg Snow, being amazing at everything he does, and he had a chance to share on the panel as well later, and just had a lot of great things to say. And then he also pitched about 2 lines. In between all the artist acts, I was kind of up on stage sharing about different aspects of our ministry, kind of like our 4 teams with the Ripe Artists, Ripe Worship, Creatives Philly, 2 Lines Philly, just kind of talking about the whole of our ministry, which I try to do the best I could with that. But I really love what we did with these panels. So over the course of the night, we had 2 pauses for about 15 minutes each from performances where we put a handful of folks from our community up on stage. And rather than Scott talk about Ripe, you guys got a chance to talk about Ripe. And so for the first panel, it was actually the Ripe Worship leadership team of Esteban and Priscilla, who are here on this podcast, Mike and Olivia Weatherby, Emily Phillips, and Abel, who had just performed. What do you guys remember about that first panel, if anything, that stood out to you guys?
I think even like from your end, you were asking the questions, but it was like your first time actually hearing from a lot of people and how they actually felt about the ministry. So like that was awesome to see how good like people spoke about the ministry and stuff, and like you can tell it kind of hit you in the feels a little bit, but it was like a heartwarming moment for myself.
Yeah, I feel like it was unlike anything we've done before, just having a bunch of people speak to something. And for me, I feel like it was just a great just variety of responses of like how Ripe is impactful for a bunch of different people and the reason why we're a part of something like this. And I mean, I think that's so beneficial when you're in a space with a bunch of people because so many different people can resonate with that person's story about this or whatever it might be. So I just thought it was really great to just all be up there. And I even was impacted just by hearing other people's like just share their heart for things. And yeah, I hope we continue to do that in the future because I think it was great.
Yeah, same. They were super good. I low-key wish we had the questions beforehand, bro, because you asked some crazy questions.
Got put on the spot.
And we had to think of them on the
Not that
spot.
crazy.
I thought they were just like, they were really good questions, don't get me wrong. I thought they were intense, though. I was like, bro, that's a hard question, bro.
I mean,
If you rehearse it, it doesn't feel real.
gotta be
That's true.
quick.
That's a good
You
point.
gotta be quick
That's a
on your
good
feet.
point. One of them was like, why should someone give money to Ripe? I was like,
Why should-
Scott, dang, bro. I can't think of this on the
You
spot.
should know
That's
that answer
crazy.
immediately.
That was crazy.
It was why should people consider
Sure,
supporting
yes.
Ripe?
Apologies.
Give
Yeah,
money
yeah.
to
I know that was
Because
that
we're
is
It's
true.
the same thing.
That
You're
is
just saying it
crazy.
nice.
No, but I
saying it
really
nice.
thought I think there's something special about hearing from other people in the community that aren't you, Scott. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because we have a bunch of people in the community who are in it for a reason. And I think asking those questions and just hearing people talk is helpful for people in whatever congregation or concert or whatever we're at because it gets them hearing more people talking. You know what I mean? And I think that's super helpful for buy-in. And it also shows that we have buy-in. And I think people seeing that, it's not only Scott who's buying in, but also like the artists, also Ripe Worship, also, the poets and stuff like that. Like the more I think people see that the artists are really bought into the vision of Ripe, I think the more people will buy in, that aren't even in Ripe. And I think that's one of the biggest goals about doing Good Soil and this whole thing is like, we want people to see that this is a very important ministry of the arts in Philly and that they should buy into it, like in whatever way they can, not just money, but like prayers and support coming out to shows, coming out to open mics. Like I think us doing the panels helped that a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, to me, the highlight of the night, all your sets were amazing, but the panels were just like, oh, this is what makes Good Soil Good Soil. It was like this moment where it's not just being a consumer, it's being invited in to be a part of the story in a way, which I thought was really important. After the first panel, though, we got back into some sets. We had Leah friggin' Wren.
Yes.
Vocal runs like crazy. You know what I mean? She's so
Kills
good
it.
at that.
She kills it every time.
Just like, it's like listening to a bird singing, you know?
Leah
Beautiful
just has
bird.
like natural like grace when she just walks onto the stage, and she'll underplay it for herself every single time. But
Facts.
she just walks up there and she just is herself and she sings, and it's so good every single time.
Yeah.
So she was amazing.
I was just speaking to one of the other Ripe artists about Leah, and just it's great if anyone's gotten to experience her writing process. Like, she's like a song factory. And I think the way that she performs and stuff, like the lyrics just hit you.
Too bad she'll never tell anyone that she has a show. You know what I mean? That'd be clutch if she did. But, hey, we'll see. We'll
That's
see
an
one
inside
day.
joke out there, because Leah has a hard time of telling people when she gets booked places.
Very
She'll tell you
hard
after
time.
the show happened.
Yeah, after it's done.
They'll be like,
She's like, I had a show on Friday. We're like,
It's like,
wait,
okay,
what?
thanks for
You
letting us
got anything
know,
you want
bro.
us to pray
Like,
for? Oh, I did a show last week. Retroactively pray for it.
It's like, geez, oh man, Leah. I mean, we understand God's outside of time, but we're not. Shout out to Leah Wren and everything that's already been said. Just reiterate it, by saying it again. But just, she writes some really powerful songs, that really are like lament kind of anthems that talk about the difficulty of suffering in her own life and in our world, but how God is still good even in the midst of that. And it's just really potent stuff. Anytime you get to hear Leah Wren, it's going to be a blessing. After Leah, Girl Power back-to-back, we had Sergine, spoken word artist extraordinaire. I'll just say, but you guys can say whatever you want. I thought Sergine's poise was so good that night.
absolutely.
It was so good.
It was on fire.
Absolutely.
I was I was behind the stage
Yeah, we were side
during
stage,
hers because we were gonna go up soon. Yeah, side stage. So I was like just sitting by myself on the steps, like listening to her, and I was just blown away. I wasn't even watching her, and I was blown away. Just the like authority that she has when she speaks, and just how she delivers things has so much like, oh, it's so good. And I felt it without even watching. But yeah, she killed it.
Yeah, she
did.
definitely just like stepped on stage and commanded the room.
Yeah, facts.
Like, everyone their eyes were glued on stage and their ears were open, like just ready to listen what she had to say.
Even like listening to her is incredibly powerful, but even just watching her do her pieces, like if you watch her face, like her eyes are looking around the room and it feels like she's kind of like cutting into your brain when she looks at you. And it's like, you're not allowed to look away. As soon as you're like looking at her, you're like, oh crap. Oh no.
I never would have thought of that.
She's intense.
You like,
She
am
gets
I in
into a
trouble?
zone.
Like, what did I do?
She gets into a zone. I mean, I think I actually probably am similar in that sense. When there's like a purpose behind the poem, when it's not just like, oh, this is like a random performance, just trying out new material or something, but like that idea of being on assignment. I think Sergine really takes to heart
Yeah, for sure.
that like, okay, God has prepared her for this work in advance, that she should walk into it, and that there's somebody it's for. And so she doesn't do things flippantly. Like, she really takes it to heart and is very prayerful going into sets, very prayerful going into ministry moments. Like, she does not say yes lightly to the things that she does. And I think it comes out in her sets. I thought, I mean, she was a highlight for me.
Yeah, me too.
On that night.
It was
She
cool to
absolutely
hear
killed it.
like the audience congregation like respond to when she would say something cool, you know what I mean, or something good in her poems. Like, I heard like a bunch of people, youth, young and old, react with like snaps or like something when she said something cool. And that was really dope to see, especially in a place like Manoa, where, again, I said this earlier, spoken word's like a new thing for them. And yet there were still people that a bunch of people that or maybe everyone, when they heard something, especially during Sergine's set, they were like, "Oh, that was a dope word," and so they snapped or they clapped or that was super cool.
I know for a fact she impacted a ton of people, and just to speak more to like her being on mission, just like something cool I just noticed, like even after the show was over at the end of the night, she was just like lingering around, like talking with people, and there was a bunch of like, just people that came up just sharing how her set impacted them, and she just would pray with them, or she was just engaging in conversation with people. So I think that really speaks to just her heart in that space.
Yeah, for it to be a lot of people's first time experience in poetry, Sergine and Greg were great representations of it.
So true.
Shout out to Sergine. After her set, we did our second final panel of the night, which the poets, both of them, were actually on. Greg Snow and Sergine were on that panel. Shout out to Leah Wren. She was also on the panel. Also, shout out to Rosaline Rodriguez, who was on the panel as the live painter, which we'll get to her in a bit. And then lastly, DJ Angie was on the panel as well. Shout out to you, DJ Angie. Anything from the second panel?
I just remember us touching on Creators Philly and multiple people bringing it up, and the impact that has had throughout the city, and the relationships and that they got to build.
I mean, that was a good panel to talk about creatives, because almost half that panel was really only around because of creatives. Between Leah and Rosie, like their biggest touch points with Ripe were through creatives, with Leah really only coming around because of creatives, and then Rosie got a taste of what Ripe was the first time she did a creatives, like live painting.
Yeah, I thought it was also really cool that Rosie told this story about painting a portrait for the first time at her second creatives.
Yeah.
Which the portrait was of Greg, who was sitting right next to her.
That's crazy.
On the panel, which I thought was really like just a special moment, because Rosie was talking about how God put this thing in her heart to impact somebody. And the person that impacted was sitting right next to her. Yeah, I remember that. And then he got to share what it felt like from his vantage point as the receiver of it, which I think is just like kind of a pretty crazy picture, because you would, if you saw the 20 artists in Ripe and 40 people in Ripe and 15 in Ripe Worship and the 10 on the event teams and everything lined up, you would want to know, how does this spider web connect? Like, how are all these people connected? When did this happen? How did this happen? It's so many very unique stories like that Rosie Greg connection, that we, that's what we're stewards of. Or there's a story of all these connections. So I thought that was really, really cool how they got to both share that. And actually, Jarrett, to your point, Sergine also came back through Creatives Philly, through one of our open mics, a Creatives peer event a few summers ago. So
nice.
Yeah. I remember making a recap reel of that event, and she was on it.
Yeah, her audio is one of the ones that was used. Yep. So shout out to the second panel. After the second panel, we went into the headliners of the night. You know what I mean?
Hometown heroes.
The hometown heroes.
The people that don't like vowels that much.
No vowels. Only one vowel.
No vowels.
Only one vowel.
Everybody.
There is a
Wow.
vowel.
Oh, yeah.
Only one vowel.
There's no eyes.
It's crazy. No eyes. No eyes.
No eyes and wildfire, because it's all about us.
Amen.
Sure.
AIOU, we don't need you. Sometimes why, never why.
Never why.
That's crazy.
So Wildfire, you guys did the closing set at Good Soil, November 2nd. I would love to hear from you guys, but y'all murdered this set. And
Thanks,
the best, like, this was the best I've ever heard you guys live.
Appreciate that.
Personally, I thought you guys absolutely killed the set. Everybody said the same thing. I had people come up to me like, yo, they are so good. Like, how are they this good? I was like, I don't know. They are, though. They're really good. I don't know if you guys felt that you guys did that well with it, but we all did as outsiders. But I would love to hear from everybody.
Well, first, thanks. It felt really good. First off, Jarrett's really good at running sound, so it's great when we do any like live performance with Jarrett. But so on a technical side of things, like, I felt really good, and just we know the space, so it just felt comfortable for us. I feel like for the two of us, we can always, for me in particular, can be critical on just technical things or just how it felt. But overall, I think it went really well. and we got some really good feedback afterwards. And yeah, even some people that we had connection with at Manoa, like some specific songs and specific lyrics of songs stood out to people, and they like asked afterwards just if we could send them the lyrics. And yeah, just things like that, where a lot of times we get caught up in like, oh, we have these 3 songs that we're performing. But sometimes for me, I can forget like, oh, there's some like really awesome truth in these songs and things that can really connect with people. And so I felt that afterwards just with the feedback we got.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good set. Like, it was like Priscilla said, it was really cool being there. And I think there is obviously a level of adrenaline that I think probably helped us be better, because adrenaline isn't always a bad thing, right? And also just being back, I think that adrenaline mixed with just like the peace of feeling like we were back home almost made it just a really comfortable set. And it just felt really good to be there in that space, singing again, singing in front of a bunch of people that we know. Mm-hmm. It was just good. Yeah, it felt really good.
Yep.
I think you guys were really awesome to watch. I've seen many of your performances. I'm a big fan.
Thanks, bro.
Also, like I know you guys personally, how seriously you guys take your respective crafts, how busy your lives can be, and you guys always make time to work on your music and stuff, and it showed. Like, you guys did amazing.
Thanks,
man.
Yeah, I was dumbfounded. And so many people were saying the same thing, and like there is a little bit of an advantage to go in that slot, right? Like the night is building towards that position in the night, like right before worship, and kind of as the crux, the climax of the evening. But there was never any question of who it was going to be at Manoa, right? It was going to be you guys. Yeah. Like as it keeps saying, the hometown heroes. Like the home field advantage thing is real, right? But so many people were there for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that was the other thing. It was like, man, if we do Fragile Frame and Wildfire somewhere in the first half of this night, most of this room is going to leave.
Right.
So, like, because they're there to see you guys.
Yeah.
And so you guys going in that position was really what kept so much of the room in the space.
Yeah.
To hear all these other artists that I think they loved, but wouldn't have gotten exposed to otherwise.
Right. It's true.
So it just made sense to put you guys there. But then you like literally hit a grand slam across the board. It was so engaging, so potent, so powerful. And then you guys stayed on stage.
Yeah, we did.
Instead of leaving stage like everybody else, you just stayed right where you were. As we did the offering real quick and invited people to give, and shout out to everybody who did. But then we rolled right into Ripe Worship.
Yeah.
And it was the whole Ripe Worship leadership team of Mike and Liv, you two and Emily Phillips, as well as Rashid as a vocal, and then Jason Weatherby on drums, which is kind of like the squad.
Yeah, it tends to be. Yeah.
Like that was the squad that night. What did you guys feel about the Ripe Worship set from your guys' end?
It was dope. It was really fun. Got a lot of positive feedback from like a bunch of people from Manoa. That like ending it that way was like the perfect ending. Yeah. So, and I thought we as Ripe Worship did a really good job just leading the room. It felt like a really good like cherry on top to the night, honestly. And a lot of people at Manoa had seen Priscilla and I in both of those settings, like as songwriters for our stuff, but then also as worship leaders, since like we were there basically every week for 3.5 years, like leading worship. And so I think for a lot of people, seeing that as the final thing and worshiping with all of Ripe was cool. It was really great. And a lot of people, I would say probably most people stayed for that portion too. Like even after we had performed our set, a ton of people still stayed and worshiped with us. And it was cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was the best way to end the night. And initially, Esty and I weren't going to be on the Ripe Worship team. And it just worked out that we ended up being on it. I'm really glad we were. I feel like it flowed to go from our set to just being on the team. And again, we spent so much time worshiping with the people in the room that it just felt like really special to do that again. And to end such an awesome night of like really emphasizing that creativity and arts is worship to the Lord. And then we get to do like just worship all together in that kind of context at the end. There's no other way I would have ended it. So it was great.
Yeah. Shout out to the people who had to drop out.
Yeah, I forget even.
I don't remember who it was either.
We don't need to drop.
I know
names.
exactly. Who it was. But I think God is sovereign over those changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a reason for that, and I think what you're saying is exactly it. That it was a moment for you guys and a moment for the congregation. And yeah, like good soil has to include ripe worship for it to be good soil. To me, I'm like, that is the crux of who we are. It's not to say the artistry stuff is any less valuable or our events that we produce and throw in the city are any less valuable at all. But the one thing that unifies us all is our love for Jesus, our commitment to him, and worship is an expression of that we do together. And so to wrap up with the thing that, has 7, 8, 9 people in our community all doing together is just really, really special. I know for me, I have never seen a room with 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds with their hands lifted.
That's so true.
On their knees, crying out to God. I've never seen that moment in a multi-generational setting ever before. And I'm not saying that churches don't have 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds on Sunday mornings. I'm sure they do. But the potency of the Holy Spirit that night, God moving, and people being primed all night through the sets and the artistry and the fun and the joy. By the time worship rolled around, people were just in. Yeah. Like they were all in. And to see, like, seriously, I'm not kidding, an 8-year-old with his hands lifted, his eyes closed, crying out to Jesus right next to an 80-year-old. It was special.
It was special, man. It was special.
I think to your point, you were saying that it doesn't make the artistry any less important. I think doing ripe worship at the end makes it more important. Because I know for myself, anytime I go to a show, anytime I go to a concert, anytime I go to a great event, like I go home feeling excited. At the end of the show, I'm excited. I have energy. I have my own buy-in. And I think having all of these performances of people doing their own sort of worship is just building you up all night to like, I need to get in this right now. And right there is your way to get in.
Yeah.
And right there is your time of worship, where you can actually like get out all of the energy you've built this past hour and a half watching the show.
Yeah, you can actually participate. Yeah.
And it happened too. Like, I think that's true. Because like you said, 8 to 80, like people were just in right away. First song, we did praise first, like really upbeat, fast song. And like everybody was moving and dancing, like even the 80-year-olds, bro. So it was good. It was good.
It was so good.
It was
really
good.
encouraging.
Yeah. It was really good.
Yeah, it was definitely really impactful. And what about from your perspective, like even as a member of Manoa, like how did you feel like people responded to the worship set especially?
Very well. I think on a regular Sunday, we are normally in our seats, during worship, or just standing like in the rows during worship. I felt like it was a lot more intimate for people to be able to just come up to the front of the stage and worship.
It's beautiful, man. What a night! Good Soil, 2024, November 2nd, Manoa. Would love to just spend a little bit of time. I know we don't have a ton more time to spare, but I do want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the post-show hangs and outcomes. I know I have a bunch for us organizationally from this in terms of how impactful this event was. But what did you guys experience?
I know that there was a lot on the front end, just preparing for Good Soil and just setting Manoa up for its success in general. Yeah. Jarrett was actually a part of that. A few weeks before, we spent the entire week installing new lights and even pulled the all-nighter to make sure that was in place. We installed additional speakers. So I know at the end of Good Soil, I was just so happy. I know Jarrett was happy too, because Jarrett normally brings a lot of his own equipment in and he didn't have to. And I was like, I don't have to break any of this down. Yeah, but also Manoa is in a better position to be able to put on these type of shows in the future, but also to just make the regular Sunday worship that much better.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, for us, so a couple outcomes. One, we've gotten to connect with people from Manoa. Like, I think just being in that space, we got to talk with people again. We've gotten lunch with a couple of people, just to reconnect, and that's been great. And then also just from inside of Ripe outcomes, I feel like just whenever we do an event like this, it's kind of momentum, like just leading into vision for what things could be or what we want to continue. And at least for the Ripe worship side of things, we, since Good Soil, have had a Ripe worship hangout meeting sort of thing. And it was a really awesome, like, just time of just kind of talking about wanting to build connection with each other more and just kind of share each of our hearts about why we're doing this, what this group should be. And I think Good Soil played a big part into why we even had the meeting, and just some really good conversation that came out of it. So that was great.
For me, with the event, I know we said this was 2 years in the making from the broader sense from the first Good Soil, but even in a more like centralized idea, this was something Scott and I had talked about for maybe almost a year. It was for months at least leading up to it. We didn't even know Manoa was going to be the first one. We've just had a lot of discussions about like the state of Ripe, the existence of Ripe. And I know I was telling Scott, like, I feel like our issue could just be simplified to not enough people know about us. Not enough people have the connection and touch point to know that we are something to support in the city, both in the city and out of the city, because everyone we know that we do events with, they know us, but how are we growing our network if we're not going outside of them?
Yeah.
And even just like telling Scott, like, hey man, like, I remember as a kid having special events in our church, like where people come out like that. That was a big part of me loving arts, me loving going to church because of these special things. And I want to see resurgence like that in the church, because you see so many people, so many young people stepping away from the church. I think it's because they don't have these special touch points. To them, church is just the same people week in, week out saying the same thing. They're not getting it from new perspectives and new points of view from people that they can maybe relate to more directly. And seeing it, we said it so many times leading up that this was going to be a proof of concept to what our future could look like as Ripe. And I remember hoping and praying that the artists would love it. We knew everyone was going to enjoy it, but there would be a legit buy-in for more possible events. And we're seeing that now.
Yep.
We're seeing more potential times to do Good Soil because everyone sees the value and sees what it means to us as Ripe. Is this going to save Ripe? Is this going to like keep Ripe alive on its own? No, but I think it's going to be key for us as a community.
Yeah, I think it was really, really, really good framework for like building like a house on, like something, maybe a mobile home that we can take to a bunch of different places and like not rinse and repeat, but do in a very similar way. That would build momentum for us. Like, it feels tourable, low key. It just, for me, it was like a really good start to something I think that we can and will probably do consistently. And I think we needed that, low key.
A good foundation. Would you call that Good Soil?
Yeah, it was.
Hey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll share just a couple organizationally. Abel called me on his way home after doing the set at Manoa. And I think we got out of there around midnight or something, 11:30. We were on the phone until 2 a.m.
Sheesh.
After Good Soil. And it was basically Abel saying the same thing over and over and over again for like 2 hours, which was, this was like the best thing he's seen us do. And this was so important for us. And we need to keep doing these. And like he basically said, if you told me that there was another Good Soil tomorrow, I'd say where? Like, I'm in.
Same.
Like, I want to do this. I will do this again.
Yeah.
Let's get churches. Let's start finding our churches. Let's start reaching out to other churches. Like, this was so good. And from his vantage point, he was like, we get booked for gigs, we go do gigs, right? We throw our creatives events, our open mics to reach out to artists that don't know Jesus and try to build a relationship with them. We got 2 lines. Like, there's a lot that we do over a calendar year, right? We have about 100 dates on our calendar every year. But he just said for the first time in 2.5 years, it felt like something that was really a full representation of our community. And it was just like, we got to do this. Yeah. Like, Good Soil is a way forward for our ministry. And I think fiscally, we don't know what's going to happen with that. But our theory is, man, if these events could become successful fundraisers, this could actually be a way for us to not just fund our ministry with Ripe Creatives, but also, if they become really sustainable, fund our artists in Ripe Creatives and be a blessing for everybody, like a rising tide raising all ships, that everybody wins from these. And so our heart is like to take the resources from the offering and give 50% of it basically towards the artists and 50% towards the ministry, and kind of build this model out, long term, that this could become a way that everybody eats a little bit from the thing becoming more sustainable. So, I think it was just like I was like, man, this is a model that works. Yeah. Like, there was something so special. And I also felt like the burden wasn't on any individual artist over the course of the night. Like, there were no drops, but it was easier to have no drops because nobody was doing like a 45-minute set.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Everybody was doing 10, 15 minutes. And over the course of the night, we had this picture of the body of Christ. It was really dynamic and robust. So, and yeah, I'll just say this, outcomes for 2025, like we have a handful of conversations already with other churches about Good Soil because of this Good Soil on November 2nd, 2024. So we definitely are making connections because of this whole event.
To take it full circle back to Este's question that he had a fun time answering with the why should someone invest into Ripe. Speaking into that, to show how important Ripe is to all the artists and everyone involved, when Scott told everyone the numbers and what everyone's cut of the 50%, I'd say about 90% of the people said, keep it. I'd rather see Ripe benefit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually 100%.
100%. Even better.
100%.
Amen.
Yeah, every person reached out and said, just keep it.
Yeah. I think that shows how impactful and important Good Soil was to like us as a community too. Like, it didn't feel like a burden. You know what I mean? Especially for Priscilla and I, like we said, alluded to earlier, like, it felt like coming home. We felt supported by the people that we knew at the church and in Ripe. It was just, it was a really, really good time. It was a really good time.
Man, it was a great night. Something that we really believe is going to be a part of our story moving forward. So we hope that you, tune in. We actually have another Good Soil episode coming in a couple of weeks, so you can be on the lookout for that. From our second Good Soil in the same month. We ended up doing this again 2 weeks later in East Stroudsburg, because of the success of this one and just, seeing what God's been doing, with this whole model. And I think you might see the word Good Soil here on The Time Is Ripe a few more times in 2025. I think it's quite possible.
It's going to be a much more regular title.
Yes,
it might be. It might be. We'll have to get creative with what to call these. But shout out to Manoa. Thank you guys not only for opening your space, volunteering and showing up and running the door and being the ushers to help people get in, but also giving, right? A bunch of people from the church actually gave resources the night of the event. And then not only that, but Manoa as a church went back and they gave again as a church to just support the ministry after the event because of how well the event went, which helps us in our bottom line as we wrap up the year and all that kind of stuff here in 2024. So shout out to Manoa. Thank you for your generosity and your hospitality. Yeah. And I know Pastor Stefan and have already been talking about doing this again in 2025 with Manoa. So
Let's
it
make it
clearly
happen.
was a success. So. Thank you so much to everybody who partners with us. Your generosity is what enables us to take risks to even do events like this. So thank you for also partnering with us so that we can step out in faith and dream about what does it look like to do good soils in different parts of our city and region. Some good soils might be financially sustainable through the generosity of the plate or the church. There's going to be good soils that we do that probably won't raise a lot of money. And how are we able to do that? It's only because of your generosity as partners, giving and supporting what we do. So thank you for partnering with us. If you're here listening to this podcast, you don't currently partner with us, please jump on our website, ripecreatives.com. Consider becoming a partner with what we do at whatever frequency and capacity is right for you and your family. Any support, all support goes a really long way to fund everything that we do as a ministry. And can't wait for the future of this whole good soil thing and Ripe as a whole. Aunt, Priscilla, Esteban, Jarrett, thank you guys so much for being a part of this episode.
Always. No
and until next time, y'all, stay ripe.
And you don't hold my heart.